Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm delighted to be alongside today's distinguished panel members, whom you'll hear from very shortly. As we just heard, the BCIC, or British Columbia Innovation Council, is the province's lead agency promoting the commercialization of advanced or innovative technologies. We support programs and initiatives that develop entrepreneurs and help technology companies start, grow, and succeed in BC. The technology industry crosses all industry sectors, from digital media to natural gas to healthcare. Jobs created for the province in the technology sector are among the highest paying jobs that we as a province have the ability to create. These are the jobs that will move innovation forward to meet our environmental objectives. There are innovative companies throughout BC who are working on technologies that can help BC become the cleanest in the world. And it's my pleasure on a daily basis to go throughout the province and meet some of these inventive, wonderful entrepreneurs. As Professor Mueller stated this morning, from extraction, production, transport to liquefaction, there are hurdles to overcome in greenhouse gas emissions and pollutants. But those challenges are really the opportunities for innovation and advancement to occur. And also, they're the opportunities for researchers and entrepreneurs who are working on solving those problems. Today, our esteemed panel represents all aspects of the LNG industry, from upstream to transportation to liquefaction. They will discuss where the opportunities for innovation exist in their part of the equation and what are the hurdles we need to overcome. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Brenda Kenny is President and CEO of the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association, where she works with industry partners on a wide range of issues, including safety and environmental responsibilities and regulatory efficiency. Brenda has many accomplishments, including spending a number of years with the National Energy Board. She is an adjunct professor in the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary and also sits on the Board of Governors there. She sits on the board of the Climate Change and Emissions Management Corporation, which is an Alberta independent not-for-profit organization that invests in clean technology solutions. Brenda was recently appointed to the board of the Alberta Economic Development Authority to provide strategic advice on diversifying the economy and improving Alberta's competitiveness. Welcome, Brenda. Michel Oud is the Chief Development Engineer at Rolls-Royce Canada. He holds a bachelor degree in Applied Sciences Engineering and a master degree in Applied Science from the University of Toronto Institute of Aerospace Studies. Michel has worked for various companies on the design and manufacturing of composite material parts for aerospace, scientific, and industrial applications. In 1998, he joined the energy division of Rolls-Royce in Montreal. He's worked on the development of the low-emissions combustion systems of the Trent and RB211 aeroderivative gas turbines. And since 2008, he has been member of the production and fleet engine team responsible for Rolls-Royce engines in service, with a focus on the gas turbine combustion system and their environmental impact combined with their operational capability. Welcome, Michelle. Matt Horn is the Pembina Institute's Associate Regional Director for BC. Drawing on his 10 years of experience with energy and climate change issues in Canada, Matt is a leading voice in the province on the environmental issues associated with LNG development. His recent report, Wellhead to Waterline, examined opportunities to limit greenhouse gas emissions from BC's proposed LNG industry. Matt holds a Bachelor of Engineering from Dalhousie and a Master of Resource and Environmental Management from SFU. Daryl Vickers, no relation, attended college in his hometown and graduated from LSU in Louisiana with a BSc in Industrial Engineering in 1984. He's worked with gas turbines and centrifugal compressors his entire career. He started in LNG over 20 years ago with Compressor Controls Corporation. As vice president of their LNG market segment, they provided controls for over 90% of the world's LNG refrigeration trains. He joined GE's oil and gas group in 2010 as a sales leader for LNG and is currently an executive with General Electric Oil and Gas with responsibility for North American turbo machinery sales. Welcome, Daryl. Tim Wall was appointed president of Kitimat Upstream Operations in January 2013 and previously served as president of Apache Canada Limited. Prior to these Canadian leadership roles, Mr. Wall held several international positions for Apache Corp as an engineer in Houston, then moved to Midland as Permian Basin District Manager. He later became Gulf Coast Production Manager, Country Manager for China, Central Region Operations Manager, and Apache North Sea Operations Manager. In March 2006, he took on the position of Australian Region Vice President and Managing Director of Apache Energy Limited. Please join me in welcoming our panel. At this point, I'd like to invite each of you, starting with Brenda, to give some opening remarks.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I was only able to get in late last night, so I missed the first day or two, but I gather it's been a great conference, and certainly it's an exciting morning thinking about the environmental performance side of all of this. My remarks are largely contextual, but I will share some examples of what's going on in the pipeline industry today with respect to collaboration and a very deliberate focus on performance improvement. I also want to share one example of an emerging idea called the Canadian Pipeline Technology Collaborative, which is where industry and governments and academics across the country might come together around some specific objectives. And finally, as mentioned, I'm on the board for the Climate Change Emissions Management Corporation in Alberta. I think that's a good example of where a government chooses to leverage its own heft to move the needle deliberately, and I want to share what the role there is on looking at innovation. But for all of those examples, I think it really starts with being very clear about the objectives. When we set out to innovate, there will be some things prompted by cost considerations within individual companies or competitive positioning in terms of a sales advantage or a strategic positioning advantage. But many things are driven by a shot to the moon or a clear focus on a couple of key areas of interest. And for that, I think government policy and public interest is important, and also regulators and standard making insofar as it touches those things. So it really brings us to a sense of responsibility. I think any operator in any part of the value chain is very focused on this and thoroughly understands the role of innovation in advancing that responsibility. So the clearer we can be together on what the point is, what matters most, and what we're doing about it, I think the more focused we can be, the higher level of success and results is. And also, frankly, I think it strips away a lot of the noise that sometimes suggests there's a gap between expectations or desired outcomes between industry and other players. I find in my job and various other experiences that when you sit down face to face and you move away from points of conflict, there's usually a 90 or 95% overlap in shared outcomes. And then we can roll up our sleeves and get things done. To that end, I'd also point to the importance of collaboration, and that'll bring me to my first example within the pipeline sector in Canada today. We have an initiative called SEPA Integrity First, very similar to responsible care in chemicals and other major sectoral approaches. Now, the big push there is a recognition that when it comes to things that really matter, you actually are foolish to try to compete on safety, for example. You're much further ahead to recognize that you all have a shared interest in advancing that performance, and if you can structure an effective way to collaborate, focus on what matters, measure those results, and drive it ahead, you will be further ahead. Certainly, you can still compete, and we'll hear from some key suppliers who undoubtedly do very well by competing. And that you know, the old adage of necessity is the mother of invention. That's what brings out great innovation too. But at an industry sector level, when we can say, look, we all want to solve this issue, we can deploy more brains, more power, more focus, and a quicker turnaround on pilot projects, on new innovation ideas, sharing that learning, becoming a broad learning organization, and deriving performance. That's what SEPA Integrity First does, and I invite you to look at our website to learn more about that. But industry itself cannot make these strides on our own. It's important to engage the horsepower across this country in academia and in the very fine research agencies around the country and abroad. We have discovered in some recent research that in pipeline safety, the single highest concentration of academic power is in Canada. And we rank second in the world to the US in terms of the actual head count, which is remarkable. So we have a fantastic setting stage for that. It's no wonder in many respects because frankly, Canadian pipelines are among the safest in the world. We have a goal of 0 incidents and we're intending to get there, but we are well positioned with very large sophisticated companies that have been at this for a long time, very, very driven. Governments and regulators do have an important role, and it goes back to the policy setting and clarity, but also recognizing that with successful industry comes a huge amount of revenue. When you listen in this conference to the opportunity in British Columbia coming from LNG, for example, that is new money to the government dictated by voters. And I invite you all to think about and imagine the possibility if that new revenue, rather than creating a tax backwards that creates an economic disadvantage to invest in British Columbia, recognize that the powerhouse of successful industry results in a huge number of new opportunities and new choices by government. Today, already in Canada, the numbers are staggering in the 20, 30, $40 billion range of revenue to governments, a slice of which can and should, I think, be deployed more actively to R&D. And in Alberta, my final example, there is a carbon levy in place today. Others would call it a tax, but Albertans don't like taxes, so we'll call it a levy. Nonetheless, that instrument goes 100% to innovation. The Climate Change Emissions Management Corp is an arm's length group that runs a very robust process to select opportunities, and we have invested over $200 million already of that levy and leveraged it to over $1.3 billion worth of high-tech projects underway today, many of which will create new Canadian companies that can compete on a world scale with innovations that matter. So let's look at what we can do. Let's be sure about how to leverage that whole value chain, including government revenue, to drive forward and position Canada and British Columbia to be among the best in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Michelle?
Thank you. Obviously, the points I want to make about innovation are mostly related to gas turbines. And gas turbines have been an important part of LNG production since it's come in existence. And as Professor Mueller said earlier, to liquefy natural gas, even though you are taking energy out of the gas, you need to spend energy. Obviously, the easiest and most available source of energy to the liquefied natural gas industries is natural gas. It is the feed gas and it is the end product. So, and as we've heard, there's also, with the use of natural gas in those processes comes the concern of greenhouse gases. So I think from my standpoint, where the innovation should be is, as with any other source of pollution, is the first order of business is always to reduce. So to reduce the amount of natural gas that is used in the process, it is in the best interest of the industry because that maximizes revenue. So, so to put it another way, it's making the most out of the natural gas that is used because every BTU of natural gas that is saved is a BTU of natural gas that is shipped out. So, so again, saying that the focus should be on increasing efficiency of the processes and the equipment used everywhere in this industry. And that's definitely true of the downstream portion where the liquefaction is done, but it's also true at midstream along the gas pipelines, and I'm sure there are opportunities upstream as well. There may even be opportunities for innovation in the transportation. We have heard about how transportation public transportation, heavy trucks. Now we're seeing it in the shipping industry, converting to natural gas, liquids or liquefied natural gas to displace more traditional, heavier marine fuels that also have a greenhouse gas impact. So just to put, we've heard about the potential of greenhouse gases as compared to, of CO2 compared to methane. I'd like to bring it a different flavor from the efficiency standpoint. Every kilogram or every ton of natural gas that is saved via efficiency improvements is 2 3/4 tons of CO2 that is not emitted. So it's a significant impact. With stepping from greenhouse gases into other pollutants that are associated with burning fossil fuels. In gas turbines, over the last 2 or 3 decades, there has been a great deal of innovation that has gone into the products to develop low emissions combustion systems to reduce NOx to levels that are now extremely low. But at this point, I think that there may be a need to think about how we have to balance greenhouse gases versus other pollutants to come to the best compromise. And there's innovation still ongoing in combustor technology. There's innovations ongoing about post-treatment of emissions. But again, there needs to be a balance in an effort to get to the overall highest possible efficiency of the overall process.
Thank you, Michelle. Daryl?
Well, Shirley, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of innovation and development of LNG. The only reason we're discussing LNG today is because the industry's invested in technology and processes and innovations that create more optimum processes so that we can actually monetize the gas, and that's what creates this shale gas revolution. So technology in the LNG industry has been dynamic and continuously improving for 30 years, and GE's been a key part of reaching a lot of these technological milestones in the industry. Today, our equipment is delivering the cleanest LNG for all the plants in the world. It's a flagship market for GE. And part of our flagship, we've invested big bets in our technology. These big bets have paid off. So we've seen it on the ground with projects like Gorgon, Wheatstone, Rouse Gas, and we've developed unique solutions for each project based on what those stakeholders needed. These are innovations such as compressor efficiencies, the highest compressor impeller efficiencies, using our latest single-piece impeller. We have, for Gorgon had to develop, we want to point out Gorgon just because of the collaboration, which is a term that she used, but collaborating with the stakeholders to develop what that project needed. So they had to develop an LNG facility on Barrow Island. And part of that was to develop a CO2 sequestration, the largest in the world, to get the project through approvals. And that was key in that collaboration to get that part developed. Projects like the heat recovery that's done on Tangguh in Qatar, and these have been in operation since 2002 and 2008. GE's guaranteeing emission levels today for US customers that are at 15 parts per million for NOx emissions, and we can go even lower than that. So we think that you should push innovation. We've challenged ourselves along this journey. We think we can do better. We think of improving efficiency and reliability is a way to differentiate the value proposition that we offer. And we're going to continue to innovate. and we can maintain reliability and competitiveness as we innovate. So we need to have high but attainable standards that are set. We recognize that there's going to be a trajectory of improvement over the life cycle of the plant, even after it starts, and we don't walk away from it after it starts. To show how this works in practice, once we build the terminals, we take a long-term view with our partners. And technology is not static, so we don't believe that the project team should walk away. We work with the partners and the stakeholders and the operators and continually to develop this facility so that it remains a world-class facility. This may involve upgrading their compressors so that they're more efficient, or it may involve retrofitting the gas turbines so they're cleaner burning. As that technology becomes available, we continue to do that to the existing plants. And we see every day how technology can respond to the challenges such as emissions, air quality, and water usage. In the case of BC, GE has a unique vantage point because we're involved in this discussion at every part of the gas value chain. For example, GE recently announced $10 billion of investment to focus on developing an alternative to water for hydraulic fracking. So we're constantly looking for this better innovation. So we want to improve the debate so that we're not looking at a zero-sum game trying to balance between economic development and environmental responsibility. We want to innovate to create a new solution. And in our experience, the innovation that gets the most traction is one that actually strikes that balance of environmental performance and improved bottom line to the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. So I want to touch on 3 questions related to innovation. Sort of a quick scan of sort of what are some of the opportunities for innovation in BC's proposed LNG industry? What are some of the reasons why we should be pursuing innovation from my perspective? And then, I guess, quickly touching on sort of what are some of the ways we can accelerate innovation if we do want to go there. So in terms of the opportunities, I think the short answer is there's, it's a pretty endless list, whether it's sort of water, air, carbon. There's opportunities across the board. Just on the carbon side, as a quick example, starting at the wellhead, we've done a pretty good job in BC of reducing the amount of methane that's vented at well completion, but there's an opportunity to go further. Can we maximize the amount of gas that's captured and put to use, good use instead of being flared? Pneumatic devices across the supply chain. There's still quite a few in the province that are either continuously venting methane or have high amounts of methane venting. And there's an opportunity to replace those with pneumatics that are low or zero bleed devices. At the gas processing plants in Northeast BC, right now the standard practice would be to strip carbon dioxide and vent that to the atmosphere. There's an opportunity, and definitely a more expensive one, to capture that and prevent that carbon from contributing to climate change. And then at the terminal end of the supply chain, it's been discussed already, there's opportunities to sort of push the envelope on efficiency. There's opportunities to maximize the use of renewables in those plants. So across the board, and as I said, sort of whether it's water, or air, or carbon, or other environmental issues, there's opportunities to innovate and improve environmental performance. So the next question I was going to ask is sort of why should we be looking at opportunities for innovation? I'll offer, I guess, sort of 3 answers to that question. And the first in my mind in a BC context would be keeping some of the promises the province has made. So there's been 2 fairly bold promises. One, to have the cleanest LNG in the world, and in the LNG strategy, a promise to have the LNG that has the lowest life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of any LNG in the world. So meeting those promises is going to require innovation across the supply chain. The second reason, I think we talked about this a bit yesterday in the conference, would be social license. And we heard from First Nation leaders of if development's going to happen, it has to be done right. And I think there's no shortage of examples in British Columbia where projects have run into problems because they've run counter to community or First Nation expectations. And everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with the ongoing debate around the Kinder Morgan and Enbridge pipeline proposals. Those are significant and unresolved. Going a little further back, we could look at the 2 coal-fired projects from 2006 that were contracted in the province. And less than a year later, those were canceled because of concerns around air pollution and climate change. Similarly, back to the early 2000s, we had a gas project south of Abbotsford, a gas-fired project south of Abbotsford, and one on Vancouver Island, both of which were canceled for similar reasons. So I think I don't know where the bar for social license will be on LNG and shale gas as we move forward, but it's never a bad strategy to sort of push for best environmental performance to satisfy those concerns and get ahead of the game. The third, I think this is looking a little further forward, but I think there is a competitive advantage to sort of meeting that cleanest LNG target. And I don't think it's that hard to imagine a world 10, 20 years in the future when there's a premium placed on cleanest LNG. And I think we're already getting there with oil. You can look at the low carbon fuel standard in BC or the low carbon fuel standard in California, and where where Oregon and Washington are headed, so to see jurisdictions that are placing a premium on lower carbon sources of oil. And there's a possibility we may get there with gas and with LNG. And in that case, there's a competitive advantage to having the cleanest LNG. So the last question I wanted to ask was sort of like, how do we get there? So we want to innovate. There's good reasons to do it. There's opportunities to go there. What are the ways we can achieve that and accelerate the rate of innovation? And there's all sorts of pieces to that puzzle. The one I wanted to touch on really briefly was just policy. And from my perspective, policy is the opportunity to sort of create the economic conditions to reward innovation. And if those conditions aren't there, we're not going to see innovation accelerate at the rate I'd like to see it accelerate. And a good example, a good BC example just to talk about would be BC's carbon tax. And so it's been in place since 2008. And I think it's really, really good illustrating sort of the good opportunities to push innovation and also where some of the gaps are. And so the carbon tax applies to all the fossil fuels combusted in the province. And so if you're burning a fossil fuel, there's an incentive to burn less of it or to burn a cleaner fossil fuel because of that carbon tax. And the early results have been fairly positive. Per capita fossil fuel combustion in the province has been declining relative to other provinces, and the economy is compared favorably. Focusing on the gas sector, you can look at whether it's sort of reduced flaring or sort of improved efficiency, moving more renewables. The carbon tax improves the business case in all of those cases. So to shift to sort of where some of the gaps are, as I said, the carbon tax applies to all fossil fuel combustion. In the gas sector, that makes up about half of the profile right now. So there's other sources, whether it's venting, formation CO2, or venting methane. Those aren't from burning fossil fuels, so they're not covered by the carbon tax. And as a result, something like carbon capture and storage or something like reduced methane venting, there's no incentive from the carbon tax to reduce those opportunities. And it's a direction the province could consider and look to go in the future. I guess in my mind, that's really one of the key challenges in terms of pushing innovation. I think across environmental issues, we need to be looking at how do we both broaden and strengthen those signals for innovation over the medium to longer term. And the carbon tax, I think, is a really good example to draw on, both for next steps on carbon and for potentially for other issues, but I wouldn't want to present it as the only issue. Brenda mentioned some of Alberta's approaches, so there's lots to draw from, but I think there's different ways and good ways to sort of really push innovation, and policy has to be a key part of that.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. It's an amazing time in the oil and gas industry. Just a few years ago, North America was looking to import natural gas as LNG, and a breakthrough in technology with horizontal multi-frac wells has opened up the world. It's changed the world. North America now is looking at an abundance of natural gas supplies and looking to export LNG to the world markets. That has changed our industry, I think, dramatically in the way we approach natural gas. And now we're looking to world markets to take our product. And it has a lot of things, though, that we need to do as an industry to continually reduce our environmental footprint. And to do that while providing a long-term, low-emission supply of energy to the world. You know, air pollution is a reality in a lot of Asian cities. We saw Beijing earlier. I actually lived in Beijing for a while. I can tell you that it's the air quality there is not the greatest. And last year alone, there was 59 days of heavy or serious pollution in Beijing. That's a tremendous problem they're facing, not only in Beijing, though, the rest of China and much of Asia. And natural gas is, of course, considered the cleanest burning fossil fuel and will cut those emissions in half. Now, here in BC, we're revolutionizing the way we do business. Kitimat Upstream has contracted Surrey-based Solaris Engineering. They're doing our conceptual design of our infrastructure in the Liard and Horn River basins. And thanks to that team's innovative thinking, we're exploring several solutions for CO2 and water supply. Professor Mueller mentioned us in his speech. I have to give him a big pat on the back and a big thank you because he helped us out there. He gave us a lead in. But last year, Horn River, our DeBolt facility, you'll see it on that slide up top there. It's the upper right-hand corner. That is a breakthrough facility that we built with our partner at the time in Canada. I have to mention those guys. Sorry about that, Chevron. But Chevron's our good partner today, but back then, and it's still in this part of Horn River in Canada is our partner. And in this facility, 97% of the water that we used in our operations was taken out of a deep saline source, put through this facility, and recycled through this facility. So, our intent here was to go with pure saline waters and to use very little fresh water, and we were very successful in doing that. That's just one of the innovations that we've had over the last few years. One that was mentioned again in Professor Mueller's speech at the bottom was, I'll show you this next slide, if I can get it to go, was pad size. Historically, you would drill one well, you'd build a big pad for the one well, and you'd produce that one well. It would take up a large area. Today, we can drill as many 20 wells on one pad. We can reduce our environmental footprint by 90% by this one innovation. To show you what industry can do, these kind of evolutionary techniques are taken on to the entire industry. It wasn't created especially by us. We did take the technology and we're moving it out. And I think that's what you find in a lot of the sectors, especially oil and gas sectors, is we don't mind borrowing things from people. We'll borrow it from our competitor and we'll see if we can't make it better. And I think that's a unique part of our industry. Additionally, we, in natural gas exploration, we also do seismic surveys to produce natural gas. Seismic surveys image the, hold on a second. You'll see down to your lower right there, that's the surface of a seismic survey. We basically image the ground below it, the rock below the Earth's surface, and we use this to be able to find accumulations and where they might be. And historically, they were wide paths that were cleared, trees, vegetation was cleared, and they shot these lines. There are several problems involved with that. We use what we call a 3D slim bin seismic acquisition. It's a low impact, it's an innovative technique. This enables land to be cleared using meandering narrow cuts, and you can see in your lower right there that cut, that black line that's there through the, it's gone now. There it goes through there. You wouldn't even be able to know it was there if I didn't draw it out for you. And historically, they would be big, wide paths. And this does a lot of things for you. It reduces the required land clearing and achieves a 40% reduction in short sight lines. That is, the result is accelerated vegetation regrowth, and it protects wildlife by shortening the sight corridors for predators. And you can imagine the corridor, if it's big and wide and it's very straight, the predators can sit and wait for their prey to come out and have dinner. That's just the way it works. With this technique, it helps in vegetation growth, but it also helps protect the species that might be taken by the predator. Apache Canada, with our partner Chevron, are leading in the implementation of these innovative solutions, and we're striving every day to do that with it's a challenge we have in our teams, and it's a challenge we have with the companies like Solaris that work for us. LNG presents a great opportunity to responsibly develop our abundant natural gas resources and diversify the markets in Canada. And we know a measure of our success will be gauged by our long-term performance, and I think we're all up for that. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you, panel. So I had a question, and this is it, and maybe you could just each take a short time to respond in the interest of time. With the BC government's commitment to produce the cleanest LNG in the world, are market-based approaches or setting technology and regulatory requirements the best way for BC to meet that commitment? Which would you think, or is it an either-or question? Tim, do you want to?
I think, for me, market-based is always better. I think the market figures it out. If a government or somebody tries to regulate and tell you what technology you need to use, that'll pretty much stop innovation. That one technology may not be the best technology, but if you pick it, then we have to go with it. We may change it here or there, but if you let us, our engineers and our companies, take the technologies that are out there and really work them and try to find the best one, the one that's the most creative, the one that is the most economical, and I think that's way better. Let the market sort it out as opposed to restricting it to one particular technology.
Mm-hmm. And I just add to that I think it is important to have the goalposts in terms of government expectations. But I'd also, invite folks to think about it not in the short-term immediate, but kind of the ramping on. I mean, you don't yet have any LNG industry here. So you want to know that the conditions are there in a way that's going to invite folks to come in. Look at it as a win-win in terms of the massive government revenues that come from that, and ramp toward the objective of being the cleanest, and work collaboratively to achieve that. But I agree with Tim's point that ultimately the how-to is absolutely best done on a market-based level.
Mm-hmm. And does anybody else have a perspective?
Can I add a little bit? Like, I think I would tend to agree with that. Like, if we're looking at sort of a push goal, a leadership position, whether it's sort of an economic-based instrument or a performance-based standard, you create more room for creativity, innovation. That's because I think in many of these cases, we don't know what all the answers and solutions are at this scale. Like, we're sort of looking 5, 10, 20 years out. We might have an idea, but it could be dramatically different by the time we get there. So to give some space for that flexibility. The one piece I would add in, I think there is a role more for sort of a regulatory approach, especially when you're sort of setting a floor on performance. So whether it's venting methane in the well, we shouldn't be allowing that. So I think there's some things that we can sort of set, and then the sort of the performance pieces are more to sort of push and innovate.
I guess I agree with him. I like both approaches. I think the market should decide. You should allow room for innovation so you can have that creative solutions to come to the table. But if you do regulate, you should look at the industry and the technology available currently in the industry, what's currently available and what's currently in the near term, and then set the bar there. And then give incentives if you improve or if you want to penalize for not reaching that bar. But the problem is if you set it and it's just a carbon tax, you're layering a cost on these projects. And if you continue to layer a cost on the projects, you're just increasing the risk of that project actually reaching, the final goal.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the points that have been made. I think the regulation shouldn't dictate a technology, but it should at least set the scene as to what the expectations are with some of the basic requirements, and then let the market and let the industry strive for the best possible solution.
Thank you. To what degree do you think that leading edge technology should be included in BC's LNG ventures, given the risks and the costs to that? Yeah.
I can toss a bit to start that one. Actually, I'm sort of thinking on sort of Professor Mueller's remarks. I definitely think they should be in there. I think we should be thinking about, when we're pushing for innovation, where are there opportunities of things we can do in BC that are going to have benefits globally down the road. So again, I mentioned earlier sort of carbon capture and storage. I think if you look at where we need to get to, it may not exactly be part of the mix, but a lot of people are sort of looking at carbon capture and storage as one of the pieces of the global energy sort of climate solution. And gas processing plants are one of the more cost-effective places to start testing and commercializing that sort of technology. So is there an opportunity in BC to sort of figure out how to make that work, and sort of, because we're not going to get the cost down until we start actually trying to do it and figuring out how to make it work.
Anybody else?
Yeah, as a project, I think these are big dollar projects, huge expenditures, and to some degree you can use leading technologies or technologies that haven't quite been proven, but I think on the most part, when we're trying to get these approved through our shareholders, through our boards, is they're going to have to be fairly proven technologies. There's going to have some base to them. I think in time you might, as technologies develop and they become more economic and more proven, I think you'll be able to work them in. To have a new technology in a $25 to $50 billion project might be a bit risky, and you might not get it past your board. That would be the issue. But I think in time you should be able to prove some of these technologies out. They will become more economical and work into the solutions.
I think just one other add to that is with respect to, who bears the risk. I think there is room, maybe not at the front stage, as Tim's saying, the big tickets, but where you're looking at a collaborative path where perhaps there are enterprises within BC that want to become world leaders and be able to export that know-how elsewhere or work with global partners to achieve that. Those are things that can be done more effectively if there's a good understanding of risk sharing, so that it's not all on the backs of the industry that you're trying to attract to actually set up shop here and be successful on a global level.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Tim said. These are multi-billion-dollar projects. There's a long list of milestones that have been reached in LNG, whether it's the first aeroderivative, the first frame machine, the first with ConocoPhillips technology or the split MR technology. But this isn't the place for a very expensive science project.
Right.
Because of the risk involved, it's a very risk-adverse industry. And if you're going to introduce something new, they want it to be proven before they see it in their, multi-billion-dollar project.
Yeah, so maybe there's a need to find a way to prove it, and as you say, and to share the risks before you can then bring it on to the bigger projects. And because, and I think reliability is first and foremost in these big projects. You have to demonstrate the technology before you take it on.
So it goes back to the beginning, collaboration, as we do. I want to take this time to thank all of you. We're out of time. Thank all of you for coming and participating in this panel and for your frank discussion. And also thank you to the audience. So thank you, everybody.